Okay, I have binomial denominators on this, so I actually want to put them in parentheses. And this negative in front of the fraction bar, I'm going to move it up top with the 4. So now I want an LCD, which is one of each thing in my denominator. So I've got a family of w plus 2 and a family of w minus 1. Those are the denominators. Now, I'm going to put that LCD with each numerator, like this. W plus 2, w minus 1, w plus 2, w minus 1, w plus 2, w minus 1. Now, anything on the top cancels with the bottom. So my family of w plus 2 cancels with my family of w plus 2. So what I have left there is negative 4 times w, which is negative 4w. And I have negative 4 times negative 1, which is a positive 4. Bring down the equal sign. Okay, over here, you have to deal with that binomial and figure out what it is. So let's go ahead and multiply that. W plus 2 times w minus 1. So I'm going to have w squared, and then in the middle I've got a positive 2 and a negative 1, so that's plus 1w, and then multiply the last two terms. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Okay, so then I have a negative 6 here that I'm going to multiply that by. So negative 6 times w squared is negative 6w squared. Negative 6 times w is negative 6w. Negative 6 times negative 2 is a positive 12. Okay, that takes care of that term. Now on the last term, w minus 1 cancels with w minus 1. So I have negative, move the negative up with a 5. Negative 5 times w is negative 5w. And negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. So that gives me negative 4w plus 4 equals, let's put my w squareds. I've got 6w squareds and they're negative. And then for my w's, I've got a negative 6 and a negative 5. That's a total of 11 negatives. And then for my constants, I've got 12 take away 10 is a positive 2. Now, we want the squared term to be positive, and right now it's not. That means I have to move it, so that means I have to move everything that's on the same side of that. So here's how that works. You do opposites. The opposite of negative 6w squared is positive 6w squared. So I put that over here. The opposite of negative 11w is positive 11w. So I'm going to put that here. The opposite of positive 2 is negative 2. So I'm going to put that over here. So that gives me 6w squared. And then 11 take away 4 is plus 7w. 4 take away 2 is plus 2 equals opposites cancel, 0. So now you have a quadratic term, which means you have to factor it. Now this has a number in front of the squared term, so we have to use the AC method of factoring. So here's what I do. I multiply the first and the last, so 6 times 2 equals 12. I want the factors of 12 that when I add them equals 7. So 12 divided by 1 is 12, 12 divided by 2 is 6, 12 divided by 3 is 4. That adds up to 7. So that's the correct combination. So I bring down my first term and the sign after it, and I'm going to split this up with these factors that worked. You always want to do the biggest one first. So 4w comes first. I have 4w, but I want 7w, so that 3 has to be a positive because those have to add up to the middle term above it. Bring down the last term, plus 2 equals 0. Put parentheses around just the first two terms. I can factor a 2w out of that. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2 w's, take 1 out, so that's 1 left, plus 4 divided by 2 is 2. Had a w here, but I took it out. Close your parentheses, bring down the sign after it. Now, these two, I don't put parentheses around them. I just look to see what I can divide them by. And 3 and 2, the only thing you can divide those both by is 1. So now I write down what's in the parentheses, and then what's not in the parentheses has to go together. Now we need to take the opposite of the constant because it equals 0. The opposite of the constant. So the opposite of positive 2 is negative 2, and then anything stuck to the variable gets on the bottom. So negative 2/3. This one, the opposite of positive 1 is negative 1, and anything stuck to the variable gets stuck on the bottom. So we have negative 2/3 and negative 1/2. And I'm just going to go up here and look at my denominators and make sure that neither one of those make the denominator 0, because that's not allowed, but they don't. So my two answers are negative 2/3 and negative 1/2. Okay, so as you can see, these take quite a bit of work. I'm going to put my binomial in parentheses. I'm going to move any negatives up with the constants. Okay, I'm good there. My LCD is one of each thing in the denominator, so u plus 2 times u plus 1. I put that with each term. U plus 2 times u plus 1, u plus 2 times u plus 1, u plus 2 times u plus 1. U plus 2 cancels with u plus 2. Negative 6 times u is negative 6u. Negative 6 times 1 is negative 6 equals, okay, I need to figure out what this binomial is. So I've got u plus 2 times u plus 1. You square the first term. The constants you add together. 2 plus 1 is 3. And then you multiply them. 2 times 1 is 2. Now that little trick I just did for multiplying that binomial is only effective. You can only use it when you don't have any numbers in front of your u terms, which I didn't. Okay, so now I'm going to multiply by this negative 6 here. So negative 6 times u squared is negative 6u squared. Negative 6 times 3u is a negative 18u. Negative 6 times 2 is negative 12. I want my squared term to be positive. It is not, so I have to move it and everything else over. So the opposite of negative 6u squared is positive 6u squared. Put that over here. The opposite of negative 18u is positive 18u. Put that here. The opposite of negative 12 is positive 12. Put that here. So I have 6u squared. 18 take away 6 is 12u. 12 take away 6 is a positive 6 equals, opposites cancel, 0. Now I'm going to simplify this before I factor because I noticed that I can divide all these by 6. So just do that. I'm taking a 6 out, so I get u squared plus 12 divided by 6 is 2u plus 6 divided by 6 is 1 equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to factor. Split up the u's, everything's positive. Factors of 1 that when you add them equal 2 are 1 times 1. The opposite of the constant is 1, negative 1. So is this, so you only put it once. And this 6, whenever you take a constant out, it just goes away because 6 does not equal 0. So negative 1 looks like it might be the answer. However, if you come up, let me show you this. If you come up to your original denominator and plug negative 1 in there, negative 1 plus 1 equals 0, and you're not allowed to have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. So that means negative 1 is not an answer because it's not allowed, and there's no other numbers that we came up with. So when everything cancels, it is no solution. Because you're not allowed to have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. Okay, my LCD is one of each family. So I have a family of y minus 5 and a family of y minus 2. And I've already got the y minus 5. Okay, so I'm going to put that with each thing. Y minus 5 times y minus 2, y minus 5 times y minus 2, y minus 5 times y minus 2. So for this one, we've got to figure out what that binomial is. I'll come out here and do it. Y minus 5 times y minus 2. You square the first thing, y squared. You add the last two. So a negative 5 and a negative 7 is a total, a negative 2 is a total of 7 negatives. And then you put the y with that. And then you multiply the last two. Negative 5 times negative 2 is a positive 10. I'm going to multiply that by this negative 2 right here. So negative 2 times y squared is negative 2y squared. Negative 2 times negative 7y is a positive 14y. And negative 2 times 10 is a negative 20. That just took care of this right here. Okay, for the next one, I have y minus 5 canceling with y minus 5. 3 times y is a positive 3y. 3 times negative 2 is a negative 6. Equals. This negative here needs moved up with the 5. That's a negative. Y minus 5 cancels with y minus 5. Y minus 2 cancels with y minus 2. So that's a negative 5. Okay. Let's put some like terms together in front of our equal sign. I've got negative 2y squared. For my y, 14 plus 3 is 17y. And my constants, negative 20 and a negative 6 is a negative 26. Equals negative 5. I need my squared term to be positive, so I got to move everything with it over. The opposite of negative 2y squared is positive 2y squared. Take it over. The opposite of positive 17y is negative 17y. Take it over. The opposite of negative 6 is positive 26. Take it over. So that gives me opposites cancel. 0 equals 2y squared minus 17y, and then 26 take away 5 is a positive 21. I need to use the AC method of factoring because I have a number in front of my squared term. So I'm going to multiply first times last. 2 times 21 equals 42. I want the factors of 42, then when I add them equals 17. 42 divided by 1 is 21. 42 divided by 2, 4 divided by 2 is 2. I'm sorry. I don't know what I was thinking there. 42 divided by 1 is actually 42. I think I was thinking ahead. 42 divided by 2 is 21. 42 divided by 3 is 14, and that adds up to 17. So that's the correct combination. So you bring down your first term and the sign after it. The largest number of the factor that works comes first. So I have a negative 14y, but I want a negative 17y, so that 3 must also be negative because they have to add up to the one above it. Bring down the positive 21. Put parentheses around the first two, and I can factor out a 2y. I have a 2 and 2 y's. I took a 2 and a y out, so that's a y left. Minus 14 divided by 2 is 7. Took the y out. Bring down the negative. 3 and 21, I can divide those by 3. So I've got 0 equals y minus 7 and 2y minus 3. doing the opposite of the constant. The opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. Oh, I don't want the 0 there because I'm writing the answer now. Opposite of negative 7 is positive 7. The opposite of negative 3 is positive 3, and because something stuck to your variable, you put it underneath. So it looks like my answers are 7 and 3 over 2. Let's check that up here. 7 and 3 over 2. Neither one of those makes the denominator equal 0. So those are the two answers.